There can be no doubt, leadership is what separates a place of work from a place to work. But what makes a good leader? Welcome to OnPoint, a thought-provoking podcast on leadership. It's for leaders. It's by leaders. Here are your hosts, Jim Livingston and John Nielsen.
Hey, and welcome to this episode of OnPoint. My name is Jim Livingston.
And mine is John Nielsen.
So, John, it's been 8 to 9 months since our last episode of OnPoint. Not what we originally planned. I mean, what are your thoughts on this?
Oh, yes, Jim. This is really, it makes me feel really bad when you ask that question, because we made a commitment to ourselves, to each other and to our followers, and we have not delivered. And that does not feel good.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, why have we not done an OnPoint in 8 or 9 months?
In fact, I have been reflecting a little bit of this as we are more towards the end of the year, and there was a lot going on in my life. Yeah. So first of all, I unfortunately lost both of my parents, which caused a lot of distraction in my life. But that's all okay. It's a cycle of life. But also, I got ready for my marriage, which I'm very happy about. But it took a lot of time out of my life, plus being very busy with what we do together.
Yeah, you had a lot of ups and downs this year, didn't you? Finishing
Exactly.
up with your wedding recently.
Yeah.
We've also been super busy. We've been running workshops back and forth. I've been traveling immensely. So there's a whole raft of reasons why we haven't recorded an OnPoint. To be honest, they're all excuses, because the bottom line is we just haven't really prioritized it as much as we can. Which kind of brings us to the topic of today's session, where it's actually about reflection. We know that reflection is a good thing, but a lot of people just don't do it. So why don't we let's talk a bit about what exactly is reflection? I mean, what is reflection in your mind?
So for me, it's kind of when we are very busy, just to stop and press the pause button, turn off any distraction for a moment, or do something which distracts us, and just to ask ourselves some good and more deep questions, which makes us think. Yeah, but pausing, for me, the word is pausing and looking to the mirror.
Yeah, I think looking to the mirror, pausing, it's in the name, like reflection of water, your reflection
Yes.
there. It's also a bit of a process. There's a process to reflection. And we've got two parts of reflection. We've got reflection on action and reflection in action. Reflecting when you're in the middle of doing something, but also reflecting after you've done something, right? Today, we're going to spend a lot of time talking about reflection on action. So reflecting after the point. So we know reflections are good. I mean, what are some of the key benefits or reasons for people to reflect?
Mhm. I think number one coming to my mind, it gives us a strong sense of purpose, belonging to something. Because we're all here for a reason. We all do certain things for a reason. So that deep sense of belonging to something and purpose is really very powerful.
Absolutely. Helps us connect to that purpose a bit more, doesn't it?
Yes, 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 yes.
Another one would be, it gives us a heightened self-awareness, gives us a heightened awareness of how we are as people, how we're feeling, how we're showing up, how we're performing, not performing. So that self-awareness is really, really key. What else?
I think it's also about to appreciate what we do every day and to motivate ourselves. A lot of good things are happening. We do things with good intent here, and we make a difference. And sometimes we are so busy and we can't stop and just say, well done. Yeah. And that's very motivating to think about all the good things we do.
Yeah, it can be a bit of a sanity check, a bit of a health check, right? It
Mhm.
helps us get a bit more clarity on, you know, things that we should be happy about, because not everyone's going to pat us on the back. We have to give ourselves a good pat on the back, right? I suppose if we were to summarize it, it kind of helps us become better versions of ourselves, right? So there's a whole raft of reasons. I mean, there was a study that was done by Harvard where they found that people who reflected 15 minutes per day performed up to 23% better than those who did it. I mean, 23% is huge, right? I mean, you think about it, right? 23%, that's literally a day a week of performance just for spending 15 minutes a day in reflection. So the benefits for reflection are huge. Why don't people reflect as much?
This is another good question to reflect on, and I think it starts with us being on this famous treadmill, running, 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 yeah, and back to back meetings, and trying to achieve more, and really just this high speed being on this treadmill. It's very hard to jump off. That's one
Yeah,
of the reasons.
and, it's interesting, the treadmill, because we see this happen a lot, right? Life gets busier, work gets busier, everything around us gets busier and busier, and the most obvious thing for people to do is to run faster. And the thing about being on a treadmill is it doesn't matter how fast you run, you're still going to be stuck on that treadmill, right? So that's a really key course. Another one is that some people have this bias towards action. Some people are more action oriented and just want to get stuff done, 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 right? And taking that time out to reflect for some of them is hard. What else can you think of?
I think that there is a category where, I say, some people, they are very uncomfortable doing reflections. They either don't understand the power of it, or gets very uncomfortable because, again, looking into the mirror, people sometimes say, "Oh, I don't like what I see, the
Yeah,
image
yeah,
I
yeah.
see," and it's very uncomfortable, but it's very powerful.
And some people really find it difficult to reflect. I mean, some people find it difficult to sit still. Some people find it difficult to block out all those thoughts that are coming around. I think there's another one, which is some people don't actually see the value or the ROI in reflection. I mean, how do you measure reflection? Um, so there's a whole raft of reasons, and we've given you a whole bunch of excuses already as to why we haven't done it on point. I mean, in hindsight, a lot of them are excuses. So I suppose the big question is, we know why people should reflect. We know why a lot of people don't reflect. How can people make that reflection a bit more sort of impactful? What would be the steps, do you think, John?
Yeah, so one of the steps I would clearly absolutely recommend and suggest is to identify very meaningful questions. So what is a meaningful question? Yeah. Something which makes you think, stop. If you have an answer immediately, I will always question, was that a good or meaningful question?
Yeah,
But when you have to just pause and go a little bit deeper and look into the reasons why you feel like you feel,
yeah.
that's meaningful.
Yeah, and I think these meaningful questions very much relate to what it is you're reflecting on. So, as a leader, what I would reflect on might be very different from what I'd reflect on as a husband and as a father, right? So I don't know about you, John, but I mean, reflection to me is something that's really important. It's a really beneficial thing. One of my key reflections is, what's one thing that I haven't done, right, that could make my life better, right? And this is something that I quite often reflect on. One thing that I haven't done that could make my life better or could make my life have more meaning. What about you?
That's a really good one. I like that one. No, no. So one of the questions I ask myself very often is, because it's part of my value system: how did I help others
Yeah,
today, or who did I help? It's so meaningful to me that I help others, enable others, and it
yeah,
can be a small little 10-second thing, or it can be a 5-hour thing. Doesn't matter. But how did I help others today? It is really a powerful one. And why did I do it?
yeah.
Why did I
And
do
why is
it?
it? Yeah. So I think it's very, very clear, right? Step one is really start to identify the questions that are gonna bring meaningful thought to you, right? Step
Mhm.
two would really be about determine what works best for you. I don't know about you, John, but with me, I find that when I'm cycling and when I'm on that bike and when I'm on that road at 4 o'clock in the morning, um, my mind is completely free. It's the time for me to really sort of think and reflect on what's been happening and how I'm feeling about a lot of things. What works for you?
I'm laughing a bit because it's very similar to me. I know 5:45. I'm up every morning. I put on my running gear. I love running, and this is where I get my energy, but
Yeah.
also my space, because I'm outside, the air, everything, where I can reflect and think. It's so powerful for me,
Yeah.
and so we are quite similar in that aspect. But there's many ways, yeah.
Yeah, there is. I mean, meditative practices, some people use walking, some people use boxing. I think the key point is you've got to figure out what works best for you, and what's going to make reflection easier for you. I mean, journaling is one thing, right? You mentioned earlier this morning a new tool that was being used. What was that?
Yeah. So just yesterday, Apple released a new version of the iOS for the phone, and that's this journal app now, which is a super easy way to reflect and analyze like things which are super easy is done. Yeah, and you can do it anywhere when you are on the way back in the MRT or in a plane or wherever you are. You can reflect and you can kind of learn a lot about yourself. So some people like apps, some people like me, notebook, anything, yeah.
Yeah.
And or peaceful, just meditating, breathing. Yeah, there's so many ways you can do this.
Okay, so step one's really about identifying the meaningful questions. Step two is about figuring out what works best for you. Step three is really about prioritizing it, scheduling it. John, how did you prioritize your reflection? If you think about your days in Microsoft and now.
I started small, to be honest, but I became a big fan of this because I saw the impact of it. So it ended up with a very famous thing, which was called John's Think Day. So the last Friday of the month, I blocked out no meetings, no travel, no phone, no email, where I was just putting myself into a place with no distraction, just to ask myself a lot of questions. How did I do as a leader for the organization? How did I lead my people? How did I achieve what I wanted to achieve? And all the good things, but also the bad things. And I really write. And I took kind of the essence of that back to my board meeting the week after and shared with my team, and where I can do better. And it was really powerful.
I particularly like the fact that you're taking it back, right, and talking about it, not just doing it. Warren Buffett was quite famous for this. One of the things that Warren Buffett does is he has a thing called haircut day, and every now and then you'll see a day blocked out of his calendar, which is called haircut day, and haircut day is his think day. So that's a story that I heard about Warren Buffett. So step three, schedule time. Step four, you mentioned this earlier about starting small, and I think this is a really important point. Some people start really big and they struggle to make that reflection a practice, make it a habit. So start small, start to build up that habit, so that you're more and more comfortable with it. And as you start to get more and more comfortable with it, you can actually start to spend more time and reflect on bigger and better things, right? So 4 steps so far: identify meaningful sort of questions. Step two, determine what method works for you. Step three, schedule time. Step four, start small. And then, of course, Nike, you just got to go ahead and do it and make it happen. Would there be any other steps that you can think of, John?
No, I was such make it a commitment, make it
Yeah,
public, yeah. Because when you make it public, you are more accountable, yeah.
yeah,
Share it with people and make them part of the journey to become a better person, a better you, yeah. So I like this.
yeah.
Make it a
And I
commitment.
know that when we coach people, we quite often ask our clients, we quite often challenge our clients to share their reflections with particularly with their with their teams and that, because it's really, really powerful. Sort of shows courage, it shows humility. I think these are some really good attributes. Okay,
Absolutely.
so we've got 5 sort of steps, I suppose, to reflect. Identify meaningful, 6 actually. Identify meaningful sort of questions, determine what works best for you, schedule time, start small, Nike, and sort of share it and make commitments. If you were to think about sort of 3 really key golden nuggets for people to really take away and put in place, what would those nuggets be?
It would really start with make it a priority to get off that treadmill, yeah.
Yeah,
Because you can continue to run, but you can only run so long.
yeah.
Okay. And if you make it a priority to press the stop or pause button for a moment,
Yeah.
that's where it starts.
Yeah, it's really true, right? Because when you're on that treadmill, you're just focused on your feet right in front of you. But the
Yeah.
minute you start off that treadmill, you get a lot more perspective in how you look at things. So get off that treadmill is really, really key. Pause, take time. I think step two really has to come down to figure out what works best for you, right? And I think I can't stress this enough. I mean, try different approaches until you find something that really sits with you that you feel comfortable with doing, right? That would be my second one. What would be the third one, John?
I would say absolutely. Think about the questions you ask yourself. Make them meaningful. Make them difficult. Make to make sure that they make you uncomfortable. Really think about these few meaningful questions.
Yeah, and the meaningful questions would be 3. So to wrap up, John, if there was a meaningful question for looking forward into 2024, what would that meaningful question be for you?
I would say for me, that's a really good question. It's really how I can continue, despite all of my experience, to be a better person and be 100% aligned with how I want to live life. So check in on how close am I to that, what's missing, or what am I learning about that, but really living the life I want to live and reflect on that.
Wonderful. For me, and this goes out, I suppose, to all of our listeners, would be taking time out to reflect on what we can do to make OnPoint even more impactful for the people around us. There you have it. That's this episode of OnPoint. We'd like to wish you all a Merry Christmas and look forward to seeing you all in the new year.
You've been listening to OnPoint, a thought-provoking podcast for leaders by leaders. Want to keep up to date or come on the show? Please visit www.northpoint-training.com/onpoint.